One interesting tool we have in the Mindthecolor extension is Contr CM, where Contr stands, of course, for contrast, and CM stands for channel mixer. The idea behind this tool, in fact, is to use the channel mixer in Photoshop for optimizing the contrast by changing the relationship between the RGB channels. Now, using the channel mixer in Photoshop for this kind of moves can be really tricky, but thanks to Calo Diamanti we have a very easy and intuitive way to do it. And also, as in the RGB mode, each channel contributes both to luminosity and color. This can lead to a completely different tonal range and also amazing results. This can happen, of course, when we have images dominated by one or two strong colors, but as we will see, we can have amazing results when we use this tool for black and white conversion. So let's take a look at the Contr CM tool. When we click on the Contr CM button, we can see a color wheel with two cursors. This is the default condition, but to better understand how it works, I suggest you to switch to the single mode by clicking on this button here. So basically, the idea of this tool is to darken or lighten a single color that we can choose inside this color wheel. Now, this image is dominated by warm colors, so when I move the cursor towards the oranges, red, for example, like this, you can see that this kind of colors are lightened. This is before and this is after. And the more I move from the center, the lighter the color will be. So if I move, for example, here, okay, on the border, let's try to move towards the red. Okay. And you see, here, for example, we have mostly colors that we can define as a kind of reds. So the more I move the cursor towards the red, the more they are lightened. Now, what we don't see in this image is that if the warm colors are lightened, the complementary colors are darkened. And to prove that, I'm going to move the cursor on the opposite position, for example, here. And you can see, okay, this is the center. So this is the default condition. Okay, so that's before and that's after, and I can go further. Let's try to move this. Okay, I think this is the maximum we can have. And that's how Contr CM works. When I choose a certain color, that color is lightened and the complementary color is darkened. And this can lead to very interesting results, as we will see. Okay, now the colors of this image are unacceptable because they are too dark. But how this version can work in a black and white conversion? I'm gonna choose a hue saturation layer. I'm gonna bring down the saturation and I'm gonna choose a color mode. So that's before and that's after. I would say this is way too dark, so I can move the cursor toward the center. Okay, now I have a problem because as I have put a different layer, the panel understands that I want to make an additional move. So I'm going to throw away the previous channel mixer layer. Now, if I try to move the cursor towards the reds, the darkening is reduced and so on until I get a completely different result. Okay. That's before and that's after. I can even move. Okay. Again, before and after. And as you can see, it's not only a matter of lightening the image, it's a matter of how the lightening is done. Now, what happens when I choose the double option? Let me throw away these two layers. So I'm going to click on the double option and click on the reset button. Now, This time we have two cursors. The left one is for the lights and the right one is for the shadows. Now, to better understand how the double option works, my suggestion is to move both cursors to the center and then start to move one of them at a time and see what happens. So I'm going to move this to the center and also the shadows to the center. As you can see, I have two different channel mixer layers set in luminosity mode, one for the shadows and one for the highlights. Now, let's see what happens so if I move the shadow cursor to the right towards the reds. Okay, so as we can see, the shadows, as we have mostly red here, are lightened. And of course, if I move the cursor in the opposite way, like this, all the shadows are darkened. And the same happens for the lights. If I move the lights towards the reds, you can see that I'm beginning to see some lightening in the reds, but only in the bright areas of the image. Okay, so again, let's see how it works in black and white. So again, I'm gonna use a hue saturation layer in color mode. And that's before and that's after. Okay, I'm gonna throw away these two layers and I'm gonna try again some moves. Maybe, for example, I can move the lights towards the cyan. And what happens if I move the shadows towards the red? Okay, interesting. That's before, that's after. The lips are lightened. Let me move this even more. Maybe I'm gonna move the shadows towards the cyan, maybe not too much. Okay, so that's before and that's after. A little bit more. And let's try to move also the highlights. Before and after. Okay, I would say this is a very nice version. Now, we have also a second algorithm here, so let's try it and see what I get. So again, I don't see any big changes, so maybe in this kind of image they are very similar. And this is how Contr CM works on an image where we have more or less the same kind of colors. Now, let's see how Contr CM works on an image that is featuring many different colors. Here I'm going to press the reset button and I would like to use the double option for this image. So I will move the two cursors to the center before starting. Okay, so here we have a kind of yellows, reds, we have cyans, blue. Some of them are dark and others are bright, so I think we can take many different decisions. Let's try first with the yellows and see what happens if I move the light cursor to the yellows. Okay, of course the yellows are lightened. Nice. Okay, let's see what happens if I lighten the cyans. That's very interesting. Okay, now let's see what I can do with the shadows. Maybe I can lighten the oranges in the shadows. Let's try to do this. Very interesting. And that's before and that's after. Or I can try to lighten the cyans. So I will move the shadow cursor towards the cyan. Well, actually, I'm trying to do the opposite, that is to darken the warp colors. So let's see what happens if I do this. Well, this is a very interesting result. And you can see that's the before and after, how the contrast has changed completely. It looks almost like the light on the scene has changed. Now, the Contr CM effect on an image like this, it's very interesting. But I think, I suspect that it's going to be even more interesting when I try to convert this to black and white. So again, I'm going to use a hue saturation layer. I'm going to bring down the saturation and set the layer blending mode in color. That's before and that's after. And now you see what I mean. It looks almost like the light has changed on the scene. Look at the light on the face of the girl, on the dress, and how it was before. How flat was before. Now we have a completely different kind of contrast, tonal range. Now I think you get the idea. It's just a matter of understanding how this tool works. So how we can darken and lighten the colors we have in an image. Let's try on a different case, for example. Okay, on an image like this, I'm going to press the reset button, and as usual, I'm going to move the cursor, the lights, and the shadows to the center. Now, what kind of color we have here? We have a kind of a warm color in the highlights and a cold color in the shadows. So maybe I can first try to see what I get when I move the lights toward the yellow. Let's take a look before and after. Okay, maybe I can move the cursor on the opposite way. Nice effect. Okay, now as for the shadows, I'm gonna try first to move the shadows towards the warmth. Nice effect. And what happens if I try to maybe move also the lights to the yellows? That's interesting. Looks like there is a kind of glow here. Now, what if I move the shadows towards the cyan? Wow, this is a very dramatic effect. Now, let's check what I can get if I, as usual, try to convert this into black and white. And so that's before and that's after. Pretty nice, I would say. So again, I need to throw away those layers. That's before and that's after. Now let's try to move the shadows toward the yellow. And you can see here the kind of effect I have. It looks like there is a kind of glow into the lights. And when I move the lights to the opposite color and also the shadow, I can completely change the kind of contrast I have. And this is the color version, and this is the black and white version, and this is the original, and this is the original in black and white and the new version. Now let's see how Contr CM works on an image like this. I'm going to press the reset button here, and again here we have very similar colors. So first, as usual, I'm going to move the two cursors towards the center and try to think what I can do. Here, my idea is to darken the girl's hair, that we have a kind of orange, so I can move the shadow cursor on the opposite color, like this. Very nice. Let's try to see what I get. No, maybe this way. Okay, nice. And you can see how much weight I have in the hair now. Let's see what happens if I try to move the lights cursor towards the oranges. Nice effect. Okay, let's try to move the lights towards the red. I get an even lighter color. I do like the effect. What happens if I move this towards the red? Maybe too dark. Okay, so that's before and that's after. As usual, I'm going to check a black and white version of this image. Okay, so that's before and that's after. Interesting. But I like very much the results we have when we look at the colors. And now let's see what happens when I try to move the highlights towards the cyan as well. Wow, that's a very nice contrast. Let's check in black and white. That's before and that's after. I would say this is a completely different image. Well, as you have seen, Contr CM is a very powerful tool that can completely redefine the image brightness and contrast. Of course, we must understand the logic behind the tool to get the best results. But for example, with images with only one kind of color, we have some limitations. But with images with many different colors, we can change the relationship of the RGB channels. So colors that are light in one channel and dark in another one can be switched to reshape completely the brightness of the image. And also, having the possibility of changing separately the lights and the shadows colors, we can control the effect more precisely. My suggestion is to use this tool for both color and black and white, because black and white, when we use the Contr CM for making black and white conversion, we can have a point of view about the image structure that otherwise we could miss.